Hi there. Welcome to Storytime. I'm Dr. Jennifer Bird. I'm a biblical scholar, and I happen to care very much about what people do with what they find in the Bible. And I'm doing an unscheduled story time, so at a different day and time than I typically do. So we'll see if there's some folks who are able to join us today. And looks like Pragmatic Crystal's in the house, and so is Holly Unbiblical Blarning Huck. Anina's here. So some folks are here, which is lovely. Thanks for joining us. And I wanted to keep reading in the book of Genesis. So we left off last story time that I was doing, just reading by myself, so not the conversation with Valerie Bridgman last week, but the time before we were looking at Isaac and his interaction with his children, like with his sons, and trying to look at specifically what was done to him by his father Abraham in the near sacrifice of him, and then also his own interaction with his sons, which showed us some cultural practices that are just very different from the way we do things today, right? Oh, that's cute. Well, when I said us, I meant me and whoever is here. So I didn't mean the cats. There was only one cat walking around. My aunt wanted some attention, but anyway, she's left the room. Yeah, so the last couple of story times, reading from the biblical stories, we were talking about Abraham, talking about Isaac, looking at how the narrative depicts, women, and how Rebecca is depicted as needing to be sneaky or even deceptive and manipulative. And I think it's important to comment on that and to say, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't like that. Women are being depicted that way. I don't like that men are being depicted in the ways that they are, right? Which is, um, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I got distracted by the StreamYard icon, just to be clear. And I was thinking, I think I could put my story time icon up there in the corner instead. So I need to do that for next time. Yeah, I don't like the way, people are sometimes depicted in ways that are not emulation worthy, right? And that's kind of a thing here that in general, I just want to encourage people to think critically about what's being depicted. I've just, I'm at a place in my online course with students where I'm asking them to think about the things that God is endorsing in the Bible. And I will always have, and I think it's good, I will always have students say, just because God doesn't come out and condemn something doesn't mean that God is actually condoning it. And I think, and I understand that thinking, but it also doesn't quite work for me, because this is a book that people think of as a living Bible, right? They think of it as the thing that tells you who God is, or directs you to God, or helps you think about what God thinks. And I don't think that's an accurate way of thinking about what the Bible is. But for people who do, and for people who look at this collection and say, this is guiding my life, if God is silent on something, that is the same thing as being complicit, right? The same way we do this today. If you witness something unjust and you do not speak up, you are unfortunately complicit with it, right? That's a reality we can wrap our head around in terms of human interactions. Why is it any different than if the God of the universe, or as many people think, right, of God as being, if that God is interacting in this story and is just watching something horrific take place and does not step up to speak out against it, that means that God is complicit. So, yeah, all of the things that are happening, unless they are specifically being judged or condemned somehow in the narrative, are things that God is being depicted. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted. I just got off a conversation with someone, and I thought, I'll just make use of being in this mode and come do a little live stream. Thank you. Is it Juad White? It's weird to think of the Bible as a living book. That's very creepy, to be honest. Yeah, it is. That is a way people think about it. It is, the living word of God. Certainly the way I used to think about it, and pastors will use that language, right? Um, the word of God is alive and active. That comes from Revelation, where it talks about the word of God is a double-edged sword, which is also kind of scary if you ask me, right? Dividing sinew and bone. Is the problem okay, so now I'm just gonna put this up here since you're here to chat. I love it, I love it. Is the problem less that a story has people depicted unworthy of emulation, and more of the framework we have around the stories that we're encouraged to accept certain readings? It's both. I think it's both, and I think that, specific let's be specific, okay? Let's take Abraham as the father of it all, right? This is a guy who is depicted pimping out his woman right out of the gate. Like, I don't care his reasons. I don't care if it's about his lack of faith. It doesn't matter. He could do that. He did do that. And then that's the very start of the story for Sarah in this whole thing. Is she is handed over to Pharaoh of Egypt and is his property. That's like we've gotten through verse like 10 or 12 of the very like the very first story. And then You know, and then she tells him to force himself on their enslaved woman Hagar, and he does it. And that's just very troubling to me that the patriarch of these 3 monotheistic traditions is a rapist. Like, that's troubling to me, right? And he almost kills his favored son, we'll call him that, and not his only son. That's troubling to me. Doesn't talk about it, doesn't debrief it, doesn't explain it to anyone. Just hears a voice telling him to do it, and he doesn't push back and say, "Really? Are you sure?" Right? Just does it in the narrative. I don't care if it's trying to say something about no longer doing child sacrifice. I don't care what the story is doing at all. In the story, there is no pushback from Abraham, and this is the guy we're founding this whole tradition on? Really? Um, I'm with Sarah. She leaves him, right? She is living somewhere else when she dies. Like, that's emulation worthy, but that's not what Sarah goes down for. She goes down for being putting up with terrifying situations and managing to get through it. Um, so to me, it's all of the above, right? It is also that people are being taught how to make all these stories okay. That is also part of it. Anyway. I didn't take your I hope that was as you intended. Like, I think you were trying to just okay, it's complicated, right? It's not so straightforward. But also, yeah, I do interact with people regularly who have been taught that the Bible is good and the Bible is full of good moral teachings. I just read that from a student. We're in like week 6 and I of the online course. I'm like, "Have you read the passages I asked you to read?" I asked you to read the entire book of Genesis, first of all, and all 3 patriarchs are deceptive, right? Aren't well, I don't know, Isaac isn't deceptive. He's deceived, um, and he goes along, culturally speaking, he shows us he goes along with the fact that his blessing went to the wrong son, and he acts like he can't actually undo that, right? Um, but Abraham is just an unpleasant human, it seems to me, and Jacob is very deceptive. Right? So, more than just a trickster. Okay, let's go ahead and, I'm gonna, wait, it should be troubling. Yeah, some of those stories are troubling. Yes, they are. Okay, so let's go. So I was trying to kind of put an bookend to, okay, we did Abraham, we read Isaac's story in a couple weeks, and then Jacob's story starts in chapter 29, but I wanted to read or it starts in 28, but the part that is interesting to me is, the language around when he takes a woman, right? Takes Leah, ends up being Leah instead of Rachel. And then the language around him taking another woman right away and how all that plays out. So looking at Jacob's story, and we will probably get to Joseph's story in the next story time. Okay, so Joseph is then the favored son of Jacob. So we'll have 4 generations that are talked about in the book of Genesis, right? All right, so let me pull it up. Let me pull up biblical passage here. And I don't have terribly deep thoughts about Jacob's dream and the stairway or the ladder. I don't spend time on that in my own rumination or whatever, but I know that it is an interesting dream for a lot of people. So I want to make sure to go ahead and read it. So we left off here with talking about who Isaac blessing his son Jacob. But also this is the second part where he tells him not to marry Canaanite women, the marry from the people they live among, but to go find your cousins, go marry them, go take them. And then we did read this piece about Esau, revisiting this thing about who he chooses to take as his women. So he chooses from the Canaanite women. So, which is a repetition because we already knew that. And the end of the previous chapter ends with Rebecca lamenting that Esau has chosen women that he did, and she apparently doesn't get along with him. So there's repetition even in this part of the story, a nod to different sources, perhaps, right? So here we go. We are in Genesis chapter 28, reading the story about Jacob and his dream. So Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. He came to a certain place and stayed there for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. And he dreamed that there was a stairway set up on the earth, the top of it reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. A ramp or a stairway, ladder. It's interesting. I grew up thinking of it as Jacob's ladder, I guess partly because of the song. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Not really knowing what that was about. So a stairway, a ramp, something, right? And I never really knew what to do with that line. The angels of God were ascending and descending on it, like it was an escalator, and they were just going around and around. That's how I always kind of imagined it, like we're coming down one side and going back up the other side. And what are we to make of this image? Anyway, and the Lord stood beside him and said, and what does the footnote say here? Stood above it or beside him, okay, and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your offspring, and your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south, and all the families of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your offspring. Know that I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. So this is the same promise that the messenger or God himself, depending, did give to Abraham. I don't know that was given to Isaac. It probably was. I just don't remember specifically. But anyway, it's the same idea. The land you're on, I'm going to give to your descendants, right? And I know that I'm with you and will keep you wherever you go, will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you. Then Jacob woke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, how amazing is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. It's a very interesting set of claims and images, right? He has a dream where he's promised the same thing that his father and grandfather were promised. Nothing surprising there. And then for him to make the claim then that this is the Lord is in this place. So Jacob rose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel, which means house of God. But the name of the city was Luz at the first. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God." Let's revisit this here. "And this stone, which I have set up for a pillar, shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will surely give 1/10 to you." Okay, this is really interesting. First of all, for those of you who are into dreams or dream interpretation, I'm so sorry. I'm not spending more time on that. It's not really my thing, but I do like and enjoy dream interpretation or whatever if people are into that. But this is very interesting because I'm reading through this with a different lens than perhaps I used when I read before. So, similar to what we saw with the enslaved person who went to find a woman for Isaac, right? Abraham sent his enslaved man to go find a woman for his son Isaac. And when he went, he had this whole premise, the slave had this whole premise about which woman he interacts with that he should then try to purchase as Isaac's woman, right? So he has this premise: if I do this and she does this, then she's the woman, basically. And so, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because as Harris pointed out in his comments later, what he what he says should happen would be what a polite person would do, right? Like, especially a polite female who is out here watering animals to then offer to water the animals of a visitor is just polite, right? So, you know, okay, so maybe he's weeding out the unpolite young woman. I don't know. But so something this is funny to me because I've never just sat with this particular passage. Jacob rose in the morning. Hi, come here. Come here. Come here, my aunt. Come here. Okay. I've been dog sitting, so I haven't been around very much. I think that's part of the problem here. Hi. Hi. I know. I know. You want to come join us? Come here. Come here. Okay. If God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear. I mean, it's a really interesting set of like, if God will provide everything for me, then sure he'll be my God. Then that God shall be my God, right? Um, it's funny because it sounds a little bit like like a sugar daddy, right? If God will do all these things for me to make sure I survive, sure, that God can be my God. It's not exactly how it went down with Abraham, you know what I'm saying? Let's see if I can get oh, no. Come here. Come here. I know. Yeah. If this'll all happen, then the Lord shall be my God. And it's an interesting thing, right? Because that's all afterwards, right? Like, we're talking about, like, if God's gonna do all these things and at the end of my life, I come back here in peace, then, like, you don't get that's a claim you're gonna make after all these things have transpired, not that's not a claim you're not making that claim about following that God your whole life. This is a retrospective thing that you're talking about. Very interesting. Also, we have a change in person. So if God will be with me. So Jacob is basically talking to himself, right? If God will be with me and will give me bread and clothes and keep me safe, then the Lord shall be my God. So that's like talking out loud, thinking out loud to himself. And this stone which I've set up shall be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give 1/10 to you. And all of a sudden, Jacob is speaking to God again instead of speaking of God and as third person, right? God is third person here and then is second person here. It's really kind of fun. Anyway, I don't wanna make a big deal of that, except I just think it's interesting to see these things when they play out, when they happen. Am I missing any kind of fun chatter over here? Yes, my kitty was here. Yeah, so, yep. Okay, so, um yeah. So we're gonna keep moving, and read the story about Jacob and the 2 women that he ends up purchasing. I remember thinking that this was a really, really long story when I was a kid, and it goes actually much quicker than I realized. So I think in my head, I kind of like held this space for 7 years to transpire or something. I don't know. Let's go ahead and read Genesis chapter 29. 29 and 30 are really interesting chapters to me, because of the way women do have a voice, but the only time they have a voice is when it comes to birth, to procreation, right? Whether or not they're creating sons for Jacob. And the desperation that we see in them and their interactions with each other is quite striking to me. And then they just drop out of the story once they've produced all the children. And it takes, about 10 verses to narrate the production of 13 sons or something. Not 13, I guess 11, because the last 2 come. Anyway, it's really just a kind of a difficult and also interesting couple chapters in my mind here in Genesis chapter 29 and 30. So then, after this dream and making these proclamations, Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field and 3 flocks of sheep lying there beside it. For out of that well, the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep and put the stone back in its place on the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" They said, "We are from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, son of Nahor?" They said, "We do." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" "Yes. And here is his daughter Rachel, coming with the sheep." Rachel, coming with the sheep. He said, "Look, it is still broad daylight. It is not time for the animals to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." I mean, is he trying to right? He's trying to get alone with Rachel, right? "Here, hurry up, get out of here." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. Now, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of his mother's brother Laban, so Rachel is his cousin, right? His mother's brother, so his uncle Laban has 2 daughters, right? So when he saw Rachel, his first cousin, and the sheep of his mother's brother Laban, Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of his mother's brother Laban. We are making it very clear here, right? This is family. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. I remember reading this previously, probably in a different story time, I'm not sure, but I remember trying to make this point that it it makes me very uncomfortable that Jacob just kisses Rachel because of the kind of entitlement that suggests that he's able to do that. And I remember someone, and it's totally appropriate, right? When people push back and say, well, but it's a cultural practice to greet family or whatever, and to greet people with a kiss. Well, you know, she doesn't know that. She doesn't know that they're related. And I think I very much, I get the ancient context, all that stuff, but it it's not it's on one hand, it's a small thing, on another hand, it is not small at all, right? The entitlement, the fact that he just could do that to her, that he could go up and kiss her, and essentially in front of these other men, he's making a move or however you wanna look at this. And I think the reason that this kind of thing bothers me is I still see it playing out in TV and movies, that there will be men, like, there's a depiction of men choosing to kiss, and it tends to I try to vary the content that I observe or am entertained by, but there's a lot of hetero stuff going on in the stuff I watch. I'm seeing a lot, so I see men just kissing women, and I'm like, "That's not okay." Like, that's actually not okay. Unless it's very clear that there's some mutuality going on here. It's not okay with me the way it happens so often. It's a form of entitlement, and I'm doing this because I wanna do this to you. Um, I don't know if you are with me on this, but I wanna do it, so I'm gonna do it. So I think, I bristle at this in the story because I still see it happening around me. I've had men behave this way toward me, right? Um, in public, right? Like, I'm not okay with that, right? I I'm not on that page, and you just did that to me. Like, what? So, when I think of the materiality of these texts, these ancient texts, this is the kind of stuff I think of. This a particular framework or mindset that men are taught they can have, that women are taught they're supposed to be malleable with, right? That you're supposed to roll with it if he wants to kiss, whatever. Um, Not okay with it. Really not. So anyway, I wanted to point that out. Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told her that he was her father's kinsman, so she's just now learning that they're related, and that he was Rebekah's. She ran and told her father. When Laban, her father, heard the news about his sister's son Jacob, he ran to meet him. I mean, it's his first knowing about this nephew of his, right? He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house, and that's a very different kiss, right, than the one we just heard about, right? It's just a very different kiss. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. It's a long time to visit out of the blue, right? So family, right? We're visiting. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had to, I mean, that's a really interesting question too. Like, I don't wanna nitpick on everything, but, family often work for each other for free. So, I don't know, like, that's actually kind of a funny thing to say. Anyway, um, what shall your wages be, right? So, now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. So, Leah's eyes were weak. What about what we just saw, right? So, is this there's a disjunction here, right? Are these 2 different traditions together, right? Because we just met Rachel. Why are you not referring to the woman we just met a few verses back, right? Anyway, um, I also wonder if, in a sense, he's trying to set Jacob up to ask for, one of his daughters. Anyway. Okay, Leah's eyes were weak. This is uncertain what they're actually trying to say about Leah and her eyes. Did she not see very well? Did one of her did she have an astigmatism in one so it looked different? Or, what are they trying to say? We're not really sure. But Rachel was graceful and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel. So he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Um, Worth noting, right? This would have been the time for Laban to say, I can't sell you my younger daughter first, but he doesn't, right? We've got a lot of manipulation going on here and deceptiveness all over the place. So it seemed like a few days, but he was there 7 years. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my woman that I may go into her, for my time is completed." It's just such a sweet thing to say, right? I'm sure Rachel's just feeling so appreciated. "Give me my woman. It's time for sex." So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening, he took his daughter Leah, brought her to Jacob. He went into her. Very literal, right? He inserted a body part into her. And then parenthetically, Laban gave his maid, it's actually his slave, Zilpah, to his daughter Leah to be her slave. It's very interesting that they say maid. Oh, not slave. Anyway, when morning came, it was Leah. What? And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you've done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "This is not done in our country, giving the younger before the firstborn. It's just not done, right? Complete the week, 1 week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years." How many of you would willingly live with your in-laws for 14 years? It's very interesting. Anyway, it's his uncle, whatever. So Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a woman. Laban gave his slave Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her slave. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. He served Laban for another 7 years. So just so we're clear, Jacob says to Laban, "I've worked long enough. It's time for me to have sex with one of these women." They give her one of their daughters. He wakes up surprised and then spends a week with just Leah, and by the end of the week, he has 2 women that are now his, that he has access to for sex. And we're told about the 2 slave women, Bilhah and Zilpah. So within less than 2 weeks span, right, he goes from, "It's time, give me my woman," to having 2 women and then 2 additional women in the household, right? When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. It's a very interesting claim, right? The Lord saw that Leah was unloved, so he made her fruitful. He made her very so many things here that make me uncomfortable. God sends children to those who, I mean, that's such a terrible thing to say. Anyway, okay. Leah conceived and bore a son, and she named him Reuben, or Reuben. That is C, a son. Reuben. Yara is the word for C. For she said, "Because the Lord has looked on my affliction, surely now my husband will love me." It's a very interesting claim, right? Surely my husband will love me because I'm giving him a son, right? She conceived again and bore a son and said, "Because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also, and she named him Simeon, which is similar to Shema, right? It comes from the Shema. The word Shema is to hear, right? Again, she conceived and bore a son and said, now this time my man will be joined to me because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore, he was named Levi, which resembles the word for will be joined. She conceived again and bore a son and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore, she named him Judah, which is similar to the verb I will praise, yada. And then she ceased bearing. Okay, verse 31 to 35. So 5 verses, and we have the conception and bearing of 4 sons in 5 verses. Also, interesting naming practices here, right? It's all about her struggle and being seen or heard, and it's very interesting, right? Anyway, interesting things going on here. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister, and she said to Jacob, right? Not to God, but to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. Jacob became very angry with Rachel and said, am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? So I do want to talk about this very briefly. She is depicted being angry, begging Jacob for children, which is interesting because people tend to think of children coming from God, right? But Jacob turns it around and says, I'm not God. I'm not the one who withheld from you the fruit of the womb. But to this day, I ask my students this, right? My online students, I ask them about how what's being depicted here in terms of the way people think of the conception of children and women getting pregnant, people with uteruses getting pregnant. And to this day, right, there are people who do still think of God as being specifically involved in every single pregnancy or every single conception. And I understand why people think that way, because I used to, I get that. But it's also really it's just fascinating, right? That people think about God as having that kind of intention about every single woman, every single person with a uterus. Anyway, then Rachel said, here is my slave Bilhah. Go in to her. So literal, right? That she may bear upon my knees, and that I too may have children through her. So Rachel does the very same thing that Sarah, her grandmother, her man's grandmother did, right? Sarah was not producing children, and her man has been given a promise that he'll outnumber the stars. So we gotta do something about that, right? So go have sex with the slave. So that's what happens, right? So she gave him her slave Bilhah as a woman. And Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged me and has also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore, she named him Dan, which comes from the verb to judge. Rachel's slave Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister and have prevailed. So she named him Naphtali. Right? I wrestled. Also, all these very interesting things. Right? Because the narrative is telling it like it just takes, a couple days. And then we move on to like he's having sex with, but he has access to all 4 women's bodies, right? As a result of this, like we learned that. But, end of chapter 29, when it's narrating Leah having 4 children, I mean, that's more than 4 years, right? But it's just boom, 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 because that's the part that matters is their contribution of children. But interesting that Rachel talks about she's wrestled with her sister and has prevailed because now she's produced children through her slave, right? So when Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her slave Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a woman. Then Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune!" So she named him Gad, which comes from, that just means fortune. Leah's slave Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, right? So lucky Jacob, right? And Leah said, "Happy am I, for the women will call me happy." So she named him Asher, which means happy. In the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. I'm like, well, how old is Reuben at this point, right? He's young. He's kind of young, right? And Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my man? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Rachel said, "Then he may lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. Give me the mandrakes. I'll let you have another turn with him." When Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come into me, for I have hired you my son's mandrakes." Oh, dear. So he lay with her that night, and God heeded Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, "God has given me my hire because I gave my slave to my husband." So she named him Issachar. My hire. That's interesting. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good gift. Now my man will honor me because I have borne him 6 sons." So she named him Zebulun. Afterwards, she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. Dinah. Zebulun means honor. It's just really interesting, the naming practices here, right? And this interesting claim that she keeps making that Jacob is gonna honor her somehow just because she's given him lots of sons, right? So, culturally speaking, yes, he was supposed to, I suppose, right? But it doesn't actually turn out that way, or it's not actually true, and these 2 sister wives, right, are competing with each other for their man's approval or love or something, right? Then God remembered Rachel, as if he'd forgotten about her, right? And God heeded her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my reproach." And she named him Joseph, saying, "May the Lord add to me another son." He adds. So this one is called Joseph, he adds, and then may the Lord add another. Anyway, it just all the things, right? All the things going on here, the naming practices, and the focus on the women's uteruses, right? When Rachel had born Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my women and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know very well the service I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If you will allow me to say so, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you and how your livestock have fared with me. You had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also? He said, "What shall I give you? You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again feed your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today." It's very interesting. You shall not give me anything, but you're going to give me all this from your flock. I don't understand. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come to look into my wages with you. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen. Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day, Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob was pasturing the rest of Laban's flock. So Laban is what's going on here, right? He's been sneaky once before, and now he's what this is deception at a level that is very, like, that's shocking to me, and also his family. Like, what's happening here? And why are you saying this is okay and then you're not okay with, like, what is happening here? Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the rods. He set the rods that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places, where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the rods, and so the flocks produced young that were striped, speckled, and spotted. The thing you're looking at when you're having sex is the thing that is going to be reflected in the children you have? What? That's some good magic right there. Some good voodoo. Something. What is that? What do you call that? I don't even know what you call it. Jacob separated the lambs. So again, we're talking about multiple months here, right? It just all of this is very hard for me when trying to read this today. Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped and the completely black animals in the flock of Laban. And he put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob laid the rods in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the rods. But for the feebler of the flock, he did not lay them there. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man grew exceedingly rich and had large flocks and male and female slaves and camels and donkeys. It's almost like a catchphrase: male and female slaves and camels and donkeys. Everybody's being deceptive. Let's see. Do we want to keep reading here? Yes, we're going to keep going. Let me see if there's something over here I need to check in with. Yeah, I mean, casual fraud between family over and over again, right? Yeah, by divination. That's maybe, is that what were you responding to me? Spotted and speckled because they're not pure, right? They're not considered worthy of animal sacrificing, I think, and so that would make them less valuable, I think. That's a really interesting comment, Jeff. Yeah. The children are named according to the story elements, right? They're not being thought of as people themselves, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting naming practices, right? I mean, we continue to have interesting naming practices today, right? People name their children after all kinds of things, or make up names or whatever. So All right, I'm gonna keep going for, let's see, we're gonna do yeah, let's do this, and then I think I'm trying to remember what's in Genesis 32. Yeah. We're not gonna get to the wrestling, I don't think. I'm gonna need to wrap this up, I think, after this chapter. So, okay, so Jacob flees with family and flocks. So now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, which is also not true. I mean, it's very interesting, right? He has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him as favorably as he did before. I mean, neither one of you is being honest with the other, right? Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your ancestors and to your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me as favorably as he did before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength. Yet your fathers cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flock bore speckled. And if he said, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. I mean, it's so interesting, right? He's being sneaky. In response to Laban's sneakiness. I mean, we do need to say that, but it's interesting how God is being used, right? God is doing this, not Jacob being trying to just manipulate or whatever, deceive. During the mating of the flock, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats that leaped upon the flock were striped, speckled, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. I said, here I am, Hineni. And he said, look up and see that all the goats that leap on the flock are sorry, that's just an interesting description of having sex, are striped, speckled, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and return to the land of your birth. Then Rachel and Leah answered him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has been using up the money given for us. All the property that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and and to our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you. It's very interesting claims going on here. Is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded as foreigners? For he has sold us and has been using up the money given for us. I mean, he wasn't really given money. Jacob worked for him, right? All the property God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. What property are they talking about? The dicing up of the flocks. Anyway, it's very fascinating, right? It's just interesting that we're making all of these claims and decisions around livestock, right? There's a lot happening over the giving or withholding of livestock right now, right? So Jacob arose and set his children and his women on camels, and he drove away all his livestock, all the property that he had gained or swindled, whichever way you want to look at it, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now, Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean, in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So he fled with all that he had. Starting out, he crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. The great river, yeah. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his kinsfolk with him and pursued him for 7 days until he caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said, "Take heed that you say not a word to Jacob, either good or bad." It's an interesting message. Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban, with his kinsfolk, camped in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You have deceived me and carried away my daughters like captives of the sword. Why did you flee secretly and deceive me and not tell me? I would have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre. And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? What you have done is foolish. It is not in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Take heed that you speak to Jacob, neither good nor bad.' Even though you had to go because you longed greatly for your father's house, why did you steal my gods? Your God, the God of your father spoke to me, not my God," right? Which in itself is really interesting because the reason we're given in the Hebrew Bible for telling men not to marry women from among the Canaanites is because of the issue of they worship other gods, right? And here Laban is saying he doesn't worship the same God that Jacob does or that his father and grandfather did. It's very interesting, right? "So why'd you steal my gods?" Jacob answered Laban. "Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. But anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsfolk, point out what I have that is yours and take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. "Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live." Very interesting. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two slaves, but he did not find them. And he went out to Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. He went out of Leah's, sorry, and entered Rachel's. Now, Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about in the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." So he searched but did not find the household gods. So she says, "I'm on my period. That's why I'm not getting up for you." So women have been using that excuse for centuries. Anyway, Jacob became angry and upbraided Laban. He said, "What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Although you have felt about through all my goods, what have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before me, my kinsfolk and your kinsfolk, so that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you." That's interesting. Right? "Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. That which was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. Of my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or by night." As if this is very unfair. "It was like this with me. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I've been in your house. I served you 14 years for your two daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night." The fear. I was going to say that doesn't, yeah. So we're not sure what the Hebrew language is there. The God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear. Anyway, okay. So Laban answered and said to Jacob, "Look, the daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. Whew, this guy, Laban, he's a tricky one, huh? I mean, I think of all the people that you might try to reason with today who come back with unreasonable responses, right? So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsfolk, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jaeger Sahadutha. That is not very Hebrewish. Yeah, I was like, that's not Hebrew. Aramaic, heap of witnesses. Laban called it heap of witnesses, but Jacob called it Galeed. Galeed. Oh, okay. Okay, honey. Psst, 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 psst. Come here. Psst, psst, psst. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. Therefore, he called it Galeed, and the pillar Mitzpah, for he said, the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. If you ill treat my daughters, or if you take women in addition to my daughters, though no one else is with us, remember that God is witness between you and me. Hi. Hi. Hi, little one. Hi. Remember that God is witness between you and me. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap, and see the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass beyond this heap to you, and you will not pass beyond this heap and this pillar to me for harm. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor judge between us. The Masoretic text adds the God of their father. Yeah, which is interesting because we don't know that the God of Nahor is the same as the God of Abraham, right? Hi. Hi. It is somewhat being implied, I think, to say that it's the same, but it's not necessarily true. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Wow. And Jacob offered a sacrifice on the height and called his kinsfolk to eat bread, and they ate bread and tarried all night in the hill country. Early in the morning, Laban rose up and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he departed and returned home. Hi, do you want to come up here? Precious girl. Okay. And then we get to a throwdown between the brothers, which I will pick up with next time. Yeah, it's a good question, Becca. There's probably some other questions I should be. Why do we think Laban is like this? He just is he just a pile of crap, or is there a good reason? It's a good question, and I don't actually know. I don't have an answer to that question. Is it more than just a narrative? A foil? Like, is it more than just a way to help explain that Jacob is separating from this family to go back? Is it, he's how do we I mean, like Laban could have given Jacob a bunch of his flock. Why did we have to have a story telling us that has to be crafty in order to get all this, right? I think that's part of the question for me. Is it a way of saying that Jacob is clever and is scrappy, right? And knows how to work a situation. I don't know. Yeah. And I'm just looking back through the chat. It feels like God intervenes to cause problems. Right. Okay. Yeah, this is for sure. This is true. God has favorites as well. Yeah, all kinds of interesting comments in the chat there. I appreciate that. Appreciate your comments. And I'm just realizing I'm very, very tired. So I think I need to wrap this one up. I will be back soon to kind of pick up with the story and pick up where we left off. So the next part of the story is Jacob and Esau meeting each other after Jacob has been away for 20 years, right? And he comes back with family and all kinds of good stuff, right? So the blessing, he was given the blessing, and now has come true, has come to fruition. So we'll pick up there next time, which will probably be in the next day or two. So thank you for coming. Thank you for joining. Those of you who were able to be here, especially since this wasn't planned ahead of time, able to join us in the chat and join us live or watching the replay later. I appreciate all the ways that you all support the work I'm doing here as a biblical scholar. And one of the best ways you can support me is by subscribing to the channel or telling a friend about my channel or some of the work I do, liking videos, commenting on videos. Those are all easy ways to support, as well as joining the memberships on this channel or supporting me through Patreon. And I am at Biblical Bird over on Patreon. I am going to leave it there. Thank you all for being here. And let's go out with some music, and I'll see you next time.